Good morning, everybody, and happy Nintendo Day to all who celebrate. It is Tuesday, March 10th, and we got a lot of weird stuff to talk about today. Obviously, Karoline Leavitt has stepped in it and pissed off MAGA, which is always fun. An aide, or I guess more senior official at ICE, kind of screwed the pooch and cost U.S. taxpayers millions of dollars. And of course, Donald Trump just being his old crazy self, saying the dumbest things you've ever heard. All that and so much more, including the global financial panic that began yesterday morning. Metal Mark says MAGA is always angry. They are. But this time I will say the anger is justified. I won't typically stick up for MAGA, but this time, yeah, they got a right to be pissed off. Kind of. Not 100%, They did vote for this, whether they want to admit it or not. They're like, we didn't vote for this. He said he wouldn't start wars. True, but he's crazy. He's likely got dementia. So you did vote for that, and this is what comes along with it. So I am getting tired of the MAGA. We didn't vote for this, but you voted for a crazy person, and this is what crazy people do. So you did. All right, no more. We didn't vote for this. I'm sick and tired of this. In Pennsylvania, the folks who voted for Fetterman, they absolutely can say we didn't vote for this. The MAGA folks, no, y'all voted for a crazy person. You're getting crazy. You voted for that. And yes, the comment I just saw coming through from Rev CP Johnson says, why are they panicking? Is it the draft threat? Yes, it is. So you know what? Without further ado, let's get right into it. On Sunday morning on Fox Business, whatever it is, with Maria Bartiromo, Karoline Leavitt decided to, make an appearance because she had nothing better to do, apparently. And she caused a whole lot of panic for everybody, but MAGA specifically was super pissed about what she had to say. Karoline Leavitt was asked by Maria Bartiromo, who should not have a job, but still does. Bartiromo asked this. Mothers out there are worried that we're going to have a draft that say that they're going to see their sons and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? All right. She's teed it up, right? Everybody's worried. We don't want our kids to go over and die for a completely useless cause that doesn't even exist, by the way. There is no cause. So here's your chance to do your propaganda thing. I've given you the softest of softballs here. Knock it out of the park, Karoline. And Karoline responded, quote, President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of the military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table. So we're worried about a draft. We're worried about boots on the ground, Karoline. Tell us that's not going to happen. And Karoline's like, oh, I can't tell you it's not going to happen. That'd be crazy. He keeps all options on the table. So there could be a draft. There will, I think, be boots on the ground. I don't think that's a could. I think that is that's going to happen. But a draft, I think I know where we could start. We could start with all those people who are currently saying, I didn't vote for this, because you did. We could start with all of those MAGA influencers out there who push Donald Trump upon us. We could start with all of those high school dropouts that are applying for ICE. Send them. Or we could admit that we got duped by other countries, that Donald Trump was manipulated, and get the hell out of there immediately. We're already seeing the worst case scenario happen, which is that Khomeini's son is now the one in charge. Like, according to the military analysts, that was like the worst possible thing, like the worst scenario for Donald Trump. And now it's happened. So, yeah, not going well. MAGA, as I said, freaked the hell out. Marjorie Taylor Greene said, quote, "How about the answer is no draft and no boots on the ground because we campaigned on no more foreign wars or regime change. Liars, every single one of them. Not my son, over my dead body. By the way, a bunch of psycho Republicans want to not only draft your sons, but your daughters too. Send Lindsey Graham, Mark Levin, and Laura Loomer, and all the murderous, bloodthirsty maniacs that support this America Last War." I don't disagree with that. I think, when we had a segment go up a little bit earlier today, I said send Lindsey Graham to the front lines. I mean, he wants to prove in his overcompensating way, which I think we all understand, that he's a big, tough, manly man and not this little, pretty boy with a high-pitched voice. He wants to prove that he's a big, tough dude. So grab your old military uniform from when you were a defense lawyer for JAG and go, Lindsey, go. But you're not, because you are, in fact, a coward who never saw combat. You were in the military for 4 years, the entire time you served in an office in Europe. But she wasn't the only one pissed off. On Real America's Voice, you had 3 hosts and Republican lawmaker Bob Onder, who said, "Boots on the ground, I think we all agree, would be a red line. And a draft, I think, would probably be another red line." Oh, okay. I thought attacking Iran in the first place was the red line. But now you're like, okay, well, we got to move the red line. So now the red line is boots on the ground. And maybe a draft is a red line. Like, you don't even know if a draft is the red line. You're like, maybe a draft would be another red line. All right, you're drafted. There you go. Send Barron as well. Take him with you. Another said, "I don't know, maybe she could have said what you said. And I think it might have given moms, just a thought. I think it might have given moms across the country a little bit of, this is the thing. No war ever starts out as a big war, right? They always start out slow. We're always told it's not going to be a forever war." Reading out loud what these MAGA hosts say hurts my brain. They are so dumb. They are so inarticulate. And yet, they reach millions and millions of people every day. People that are somehow dumber than they are. And I know, look, I get it. We're on the same side of like no Iran, no war, no regime change, no draft, no boots on the ground. I get that. But holy hell, how have you people succeeded this much in life by being dumb as dirt? I will never understand that. And yet we've got plenty of hugely intelligent people over here on the left that are struggling to, get their media going. Like, that pisses me off. It really genuinely does. That we as a country, we as a society have elevated the stupidest human beings imaginable. And yes, Joe Rogan is like right at the top, the king of the stupids. And that's who has the most influence in this country, just the dumbest of the dumb. And that's never not going to make me mad, even if we're still, on this particular issue, kind of wanting the same thing, which is no boots on the ground, no draft, hell, no war with Iran or anyone. But nevertheless, Karoline Leavitt said He's not taking any options off the table. Boots on the ground is still on the table. The draft is still on the table. So is the use of nuclear weapons, of course, because when you take her statement and understand what it means, no options are off the table. And I think that might be the thing that we should probably all be the most concerned about. The morons have the money, fair, and that's why. No, I 100% know that. But they get the money from the corporations, from these institutions, from these think tanks to prop up the stupid people, to preach to the even dumber people. And it blows my mind that we as a country, we as a society are that dumb. And it pisses me off, not necessarily because it happens, but because it works. Because we are that stupid. That's what is so angering and disappointing, is that we are, in fact, that stupid. McLaren says, do you think Iran would accept a peace deal if part of the deal is we impeach and remove Trump, then send him to Iran for them to do to him as they please? Jesus, that took a turn. Maybe. Honestly, if that was a real thing and like we had the ability to do that, I think they would. Because then it would show like, hey, we got the leader of the United States and everybody tune to your TVs at this specific time and we're going to do something. Yeah, Iran would probably jump at that offer, but that's definitely not a thing that's ever going to happen. Kai Trump is now 18. Send her to Iran, says Moondragon. Along with Barron, right? I mean, he's a tall guy. He could see over the other troops and say, hey, watch out, guys. We got some folks coming over here. That could be very useful in a situation like that. So yeah, I think Barron would be quite the asset to the United States military. Phobo Scorpio says, never underestimate the stupidity of humanity in general. And I haven't. And they always still disappoint me. Even when you think like, wow, we are just so incredibly stupid, we get dumber. Like we just keep even when you think we've hit the lowest of the low, we'll go lower. Always. We're just so dumb. Janice Hahn says Prince Harry went to combat zone. Go, Baron, go. Neil Whittington says Retrumplicans are just stupid. Take Donald J. Trump out of office. I wish we could. I wish we could get him out of office, but we are stuck. Chip Chart says, you are the only podcast I listen to. What's wrong with me? Nothing. You seem like a very well-rounded, nice individual, and I appreciate that. Let's move on. A little bit more Iran. There's a bit of a controversy right now with the bombing of the girls' school in Iran that, of course, took place in the early hours of this conflict. 160 confirmed dead from that. Most of them schoolgirls. But then, by the way, this did not get reported as much. Days and days later, we then bombed a boys' school. You know, it's not to be outdone. They want to keep it equitable, right? We got the girls' school. Let's go get the boys' school. So yes, they did also end up bombing a boys' school. And military investigators came out last Friday and said, we did this. You know, this was the military. Certainly wasn't intentional, but yeah, it was us. So Trump has now come out and is refuting the official claim of the military investigators. And he said, no, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran. In my opinion, it was done by Iran. That's That's not how opinions work, man. That's like me saying, in my opinion, I'm not using a camera for this live stream. That's not the kind of thing you get to have an opinion about, because it's an actual thing that is happening, that has happened, that does happen. You can't have an opinion on that. You don't get to say, in my opinion, the sun comes up every day. No, that's a fact, or it's not. You don't get to have opinion on what a fact is. Now, on certain facts, you can have an opinion on what it means, on the interpretation of it, or how it is applied, sure. But you don't get to have an opinion on whether or not something is a fact. And here's what else happened. Immediately after Trump was like, no, in my opinion, Iran did this, Hegseth wouldn't say either way. Hegseth did not echo Trump's claim. Hegseth said, well, we're certainly investigating it. So even Hegseth knew. I'm not going to repeat that, bud. Then you had Mike Waltz, UN ambassador to the UN, who said, I can tell you as a veteran in no uncertain terms, the United States does everything it can to avoid civilian casualties. Sometimes, of course, tragic mistakes occur. The school was hit with a Tomahawk missile. The United States military is the only group that has Tomahawk missiles. So now some of the conservatives trying to defend Donald Trump's completely false statement are like, no, we think Iran somehow got some of our Tomahawks somehow, maybe, because that's a thing that totally happens. And then they bombed their own school instead of us. They only stole a couple Tomahawks, and instead of using it against the United States, they took these highly sophisticated missiles and bombed their own school because that was more beneficial to them, right? That's the logic of these conservatives. Yeah, best to maybe back off that talking point as well, because it makes absolutely no sense when you think about it for half a second. The military effectively confirmed, we killed the kids. Trump doesn't get to have an opinion on whether or not it happened. V-Man says, it's a shame the Black Sabbath song War Pigs is still relevant. Too bad we can't get the song's ending where the War Pigs face judgment for their sins. Hunter Williams says, Jason Kiley is now an independent. Good for Dems. That is, by the way, a story I got coming up later on today. Scorpio CA says, when you think you reach the bottom of the idiot barrel in the U.S., they buy a new barrel. I like that. It's so difficult right now to do this, to talk about this crap, to deal with the nonstop lies. And part of it, has to do with the fact that we did this during the Bush years. And I'm not saying like, oh, we did the same thing with Iraq that we're doing to Iran. I'm saying like me, literally, personally, this is all shit I said during the Bush years. It's the same kind of research I had to do during the Bush years about Iraq and all that. Like, this is just such a deja vu time for me. And to see still so many people out there not even understanding that or completely ignoring what happened back then, because, these people were around then, most of them still in Congress at the time. So to watch it happen again is just so incredibly infuriating. DeMolder Julie says, there has been a bomb attack on a synagogue 2 nights ago in Belgium, just a few kilometers from my place. Seems directly linked to Trump's war. Thank you very much, you moron. And Trump, by the way, for the U.S. as well, He was asked the other day, like, should people in the United States be worried about, terrorist attacks now that you're doing this? And he's like, I don't know. He said, I don't know. He's like, I don't know. Maybe. Like, who cares? They're not going to get me. I mean, they may get some of those weirdos out there, but yeah, whatever. They're expendable, right? And we are seeing these terrorist attacks, like the one you just mentioned, in Belgium. Iran is not just lashing out at the United States, they're lashing out at everyone. It's the hornet's nest, as I continuously said last week. We went over there, knocked it out of the tree, kicked it a few times. Now all the hornets are flying around, trying to sting everybody that they can, regardless of what it means for them. That is what we did. Sure, there were hornets there, and they can be dangerous, but those hornets were not actively stinging anyone till we went over there and kicked it. User TR2BX7UR50 or 5U says, F around and find out. Knight6831 says, yeah, Farron, considering how the U.S. military acted after the USMC acted after an EA-6B Prowler of collided with a cable car wire in the Alps, killing 20 civilians. And then it's one of two. Anyway, we'll get to part two when it shows up. But I do, again, I have to stress how repetitive all of this is. It really, it's the same minutia of all this stuff. Except, unfortunately, we have a dude that loves to put himself in front of the camera, loves to get on social media that, basically didn't exist during the, first few years of the Iraq War. So we get more bullcrap. We get more lies than we ever had back then. You had to wait for Bush to do a real press conference to get the latest set of lies. And honestly, sometimes those would be weeks apart. With this guy, we get multiple different things every day, contradicting stories. It's absolutely insane and overwhelming to a very large degree. Thank you, Real John Lithium, for the super chat there. And one more from McLaren 302 says, to confirm what you noted from earlier, I am a Pennsylvania who voted for Fetterman, and this isn't what I voted for. F. John Fetterman. Yeah, with Fetterman, that was a genuine bait and switch. And what's disappointing is that it wasn't even like a bait and switch because we knew nothing about the guy. After his health problems, I guess, he completely changed his personality and who he was. Like, total shift. Total, which honestly is possible due to the health condition, but at the same time, still not what the people in Pennsylvania voted for. Please look into, oh, Jesus, that went away. Please look into HB 655 and do a story on the effort to stop it. Help stop data centers from killing entire lower Columbia River, says Magpie, the Bard Dragon. I will look into it. Absolutely. But if it is just, here's the thing. If it is a state level piece of legislation, typically that story is not necessarily one that has widespread appeal. Now, if it can apply, this is something we all need to look out for, this is something that is going to spread, then absolutely. So I'm not going to guarantee that I am going to do a segment on that. I will look into it, absolutely. But, we have a limited number of segments we can do each day. And I'm saying this not to be a jerk or dismissive at all. I'm just explaining to you guys how the process goes. Because we actually had a talk with YouTube yesterday, and they actually told us, you guys are actually putting out a little too much. And it's driving all of your views on everything down. So the amount of content we can put out and actually still reach people, there is a limit to it. And if you go over that, like the algorithm actually punishes you, and you overall, all your stuff, the very important or the, otherwise doesn't reach people. So it's weird the way YouTube works. And unfortunately, since that is our platform, we are beholden, I guess, to their metrics and their systems. So there are things in general that I'm just not enough time to cover, because if we do, nobody will see it, if that makes any sense. Of course, I'm kind of, compressing all of the info that we do have and that we know about all that, just trying to get it out there. So it is an unfortunate situation for us, because we have gotten to the point where, like, over the last few weeks and with doing these streams, we're pumping out, upwards of like 13 to 15 videos a day. And the folks at YouTube were like, yeah, stop doing that. You got to do fewer. If you want people to actually see your stuff, drop it down a bit. So it is unfortunate. But anyway, having said that, we do still have very important things that we need to talk about. As I mentioned at the start of this stream, on Monday, global financial markets went into a tailspin. I don't just mean the Dow and the S&P and all that here in the United States. No, global markets, Europe, Asia, all over the place, started tanking. The price of oil continued to go up. In fact, oil from Brent crude, the worldwide benchmark for oil costs, went up 27% yesterday, on Monday. 27% on Monday alone. RBC Capital Markets analyst Halima Croft said this: faced with the worst oil supply shock since the 1970s, all eyes will be on Washington's response. With no clear definition of what winning looks like, it is hard to forecast whether this will be a multi-week or multi-month conflict. To date, neither White House policy prescriptions nor upbeat television soundbites have alleviated acute market anxiety about the shipping standstill and cascading shut-ins across the region. In other words, the market analysts are like, yeah, Trump goes out there and he tries to sound upbeat and says, we're winning. We've already won. He also said, markets don't care about your talking points. Markets care about reality. So you can lie to your MAGA supporters all you want and convince them everything is great. The markets only see reality. And the reality is this is going to drag on forever, at least for the foreseeable future. The reality is it's going to drive prices up for everyone. And just so everyone is aware, it's not just because of the, instability of the Strait of Hormuz, which is where more than 20% of the world's oil flows through. It's also due to the fact that Iran, as part of their, lashing out and attacking everyone that they can, is attacking regional oil infrastructure in the Middle East. That's what they're going after. So rather than, of course, trying to hit the United States or bombing their own schools, as Trump would have you believe, Iran's like, you know what? We're going to cripple everybody financially. You're going to hit us. We're going to start attacking everybody's oil infrastructure. So again, it's not just what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz. It's also the attacks on the oil infrastructure coming from Iran itself. So even if we open up the Strait of Hormuz, which Donald Trump says, you got to do it, just have some guts. He's telling the tanker captains, that's not going to alleviate the problem probably at all. But Brian Kilmeade did say this. Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends on Monday said that he had talked to Donald Trump And he was, Kilmeade was trying to assure people that don't worry, oil prices are going to come like way, way down again. Don't worry about it. Kilmeade said, quote, he says, tell these tankers to get to it. We have wiped out most of their launchers. Here's exactly what he said, says Kilmeade. These ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. The Iranians have no navy. We sunk all their ships. He went on to say, look, there is risk in the region. The region is volatile. Their launchers, there's just about 150 left. That's just about 20% of totals. They can't regenerate. They can't make any more. We are in the region and need to act quickly on all these types of attacks. Kilmeade concluded by saying, he's saying, come on, guys, get to it, right? Because that's the problem, is that we just have oil tanker captains who are just a bunch of scaredy cats. It's nothing to worry about in the Strait of Hormuz. Go on, have some guts, live a little, right? Who doesn't like to take some risks every now and then? We need that oil because we're freaking dependent upon it. We're desperate for it. We're like a junkie looking for our next fix. Give us the damn oil right now. I don't care if you have to risk your life for it. I want $2 gasoline again. Yeah. If I were you, if I were a tanker captain, I'd quit. That's what I would do. After hearing Donald Trump say that you're refusing to go through because you're just all a bunch of cowards, quit. That is my advice to you. And hopefully they do. Moondragon with a super chat. Give me a second here. Says 3 Dems who voted to override the governor's veto in North Carolina lost their primaries. Democracy in action. We are, of course, in primary season, folks. Things are going to start heating up, and it's going to be a lot to keep track of. But that is good news. Wait, no, that's bad news. Sorry. Wait, is it good news or is it bad news? I'm confused at the moment. I'm sorry. My mind is in Iran. So sorry. ET0001 says, can you address the billions of military infrastructure, radar, comms, HQs, as well as the time required to replace these systems? In what regard do you want me to address that? Billions of military infrastructure, radar, comms, HQs, as well as the time required to replace these systems. I'm not sure, unfortunately, that I understand what you're asking or wanting me to do. We all know that. So sometimes I feel like I am coming across as rude, and trust me, I never am intentionally doing that. It's just sometimes, I don't quite understand, the point here, and I'm really sorry about that, but I'm not sure. Juan Peralta says, copy Trump to pass Medicare for all and Dems agenda. I think we should. Look, the Republicans have shown us when you really actually want to do something, you can get it done. And Democrats need to take that to heart and realize, you know what? We're going to run roughshod over all you guys, and we're going to do the things that we need to get done. So maybe not in the same manner, but with the same end results. Hell yeah, I would love to see that. V-Man says, mark my words, if Trump has Navy ships escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, it will result in the first U.S. naval ship lost since 1945. I agree too. And that, of course, is another thing that this administration is toying around with, the idea of having the military escort the tankers, because that's what our tax dollars are used for, right? Now, for the most part, there are alternatives to petroleum. Had the United States learned any lessons from the oil crisis of the 1970s, we wouldn't be having a crisis today. But we didn't, oops, 50 years later, and we're still just as dependent on oil in spite of all the, innovations in technology and all that in the last 50 years. Nah, still with that gasoline because we're dumb. Scorpius EA says, so he started the conflict in a period just months before the U.S. is going to need it. Low to go on summer break when prices increase anyway, and a midterm in November in Congress didn't limit his war powers. Yeah, I think, by the way, that is always something that is interesting because typically, as we approach a midterm election, you will see gas prices lowered. Unless Democrats are in power. And this is something that I covered extensively during my decade as an environmental writer, tracking oil, gas, all that. When the Democrats are in power, you'll see gas prices go up, typically August, September, before a midterm or a general election. Republicans, on the other hand, they'll try to keep it low. This year, they're not going to be able to artificially manipulate the gas prices, so that's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Pete Hegseth is the official DWI hire of the Trump administration, says Mike J. And McLaren says, it is not rude to be brutally honest. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But, I feel bad too. Like, I don't like to be like, I don't know what you're talking about, because it's not me being like, what the hell do you mean? It's, sometimes it's just the way I interpret things where I'm like, I don't know, my brain is being stupid. So don't take it as like you messed up. I'm not always, fully cognizant, especially, when I get different topics and we do these kind of rapid fire things and I got to move from like one thing to another, pulling all this stuff out of my brain. It can be a little rough. So, bear with me sometimes because I'm not always, right on with every single thing. And to the same degree as well, I cover a lot of crap every day. And you guys do too. But you guys will often see things that I have not seen. I may see things that you do not see. So if you ask me a question about something you saw and I haven't seen it, or I don't know about it, or in the instance of the HB 655, I think it was, it's not in my state. It's not a, national story right now. So it's definitely not something I've seen. So I do like when you guys bring up these things, but I just may not be able to talk intelligibly about them because I have not yet seen them or heard about them. And that's not, not saying don't do it. Absolutely do it, because I do need to know as much as humanly possible, but there are limits to what I am able to know and fully recall at any given point. V-Man says, Uruguay is a great example. They listened to the experts and converted their nation to be overwhelmingly powered on renewables, 98% to be specific. That is amazing. I did not even know that. And just in general with electricity here in the United States is Carter put solar panels on the White House in the 70s. Like, this is not brand new technology. It's more efficient now. And of course we have all that, but we could have been doing that for every new residential home built, every new building constructed for over 50 years. Even if we had 20% of new construction mandated, like you got to put solar panels on there. Something, anything to make us more energy independent. But no, the only way we get energy independent, according to our Republican politicians and some Democrats, is we got to drill more. We want energy independence. We got to drill. You got to drill in the public land. We got to drill next to the polar bears. Drill. When in reality, it's like, no, we actually have these wonderful little things we can put on our homes. We can build them into the side of buildings, top of buildings, all kinds of stuff. But you guys won't subsidize that the way that you need to make it actually affordable. The Great Gatsby says, if the billionaires invested in green energy, wouldn't they stand to make more money from it? They like money. Seems like that would make sense to me. That reminds me of something I've been saying for like 20 years. If any one of these oil companies that obviously loves money so much, if they had just said, you know what, we're going to keep doing the oil thing for now, but we're going to start building Exxon solar panels. We're going to start building Chevron windmills. We're going to get into that part of the energy production as well. Then they wouldn't have to spend millions of dollars per year, like they do, lobbying politicians to kill renewable energy. They could profit off both and then slowly phase us off of oil and get us onto the renewables. They'd be making money the whole time, never see a dip in profits. Why didn't they do this? Genuinely, why didn't they do that ever? Why is that not a thought that any of these super smart businessmen ever had? That makes absolutely no sense. Juan Peralta says nuclear just as good, simpler, cheaper than solar. It is. Nuclear obviously does come with a little bit of risk. I mean, granted, the risk for the most part under ideal conditions is like super tiny. But we can't always guarantee, the best conditions. I'm not saying I'm anti-nuclear power at all. Definitely not. But it still freaks people out. So you have to overcome that societal stigma, I guess. Because people think of like 3 Mile Island. People think of Chernobyl. That's still, believe it or not, a lot of people old enough to remember that kind of fresh on their minds and tainted that. Skeets here says the elites own the oil companies. Yeah, they do. So why do they not also build renewable stuff though? That still does not explain why they didn't do that years ago and make huge profits. It still is just crazy to me. It's funny you mentioned putting solar panels on rooms in Puerto Rico. That's part of the platform of the center-left Puerto Rican Independence Party, says V-Man. Very good. I like that. All right, let's move on here because we do have crazy news on Republican voter suppression. The state of South Dakota has put a new law into place. It goes into effect on July 1st. It was passed by the Republican-controlled legislature, signed by the Republican governor. And this law that we will start seeing pop up in other states across the country allows anyone in the state to file a challenge against anyone else in the state over their citizenship and strip them of their right to vote. And then it is up to the person who lost their right to vote to go and prove to the state, hold up, I'm actually a citizen, I'm allowed to vote. And of course, if they do not do that, they lose their right to vote. They have turned the entire citizenry of South Dakota into what we all learned about with the Nazis. Report your neighbors. Call them in. Even if you just suspect something, you may not have hard evidence, but you know what? Make the call. Skeets here says McCarthyism 2.0. That is exactly what this is. Everybody is their eyes and ears. You don't have to have the evidence. You just have to say, I don't think this person is up to snuff. Take away their right to vote. Now, granted, the state will not just immediately take away their right to vote. However, it will put basically a red flag into the system on that individual. Meaning, if they do attempt to go in to vote, even while an investigation is taking place, it could be hard. You could have these clerks say, no, we actually cannot give you a ballot. We'll give you the provisional ballot that may or may not end up being counted. This is all a form of voter suppression, but this is a creepy new level we have not seen before. We are in the era, when it comes to voting here in the United States, of pre-crime punishment. Pre-crime. You, the individual, have to go and prove that you did not pre-commit the crime that they think you're going to commit by voting illegally. It's Minority Report. Except the pre-crime is not, oh, you're going to commit murder in the future, so we're going to arrest you now. The pre-crime is, we think you're illegal, and we definitely think you're also going to vote, so we're going to go ahead and make your life a living hell. We're going to punish you in advance for something that did not happen, something that even if it did happen, we have laws in place to where we can prosecute you, and we know how to, do that. We know how to find you. But we don't want to do that. That's a lot of work on our side. So we're going to suppress you in advance, and you do all the work. That's not how voting works here in the United States. That's not how it's prescribed in the United States Constitution. Will this South Dakota law spread across the United States? 100%. Wouldn't shock me to learn right now that other red states looking at this are working on their own drafts right now. This has ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. This has their fingerprints all over it. And this is what happens. You take a state that nobody pays attention to for the most part. Go to that state, try to do your things. If you can get them done, great. That shows the other states how to do it. If it doesn't even work, no harm, no foul. Nobody was paying attention anyway. Years ago, I know Wisconsin is like, a hotbed of politics these days. Years ago, it was not. Years ago, nobody paid attention to Wisconsin in federal elections. And that was until the Koch network, combined with ALEC, came in there and put in a governor named Scott Walker. You may remember that name. And under Scott Walker, they were like, all right, bud, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start killing the public sector unions. Okay, we're going to get rid of teachers' unions. We're going to, basically strip them of all their collective bargaining, all their rights, all their benefits, all their pay, and do some other things. By the way, we also need a lot of oil and gas exploitation in your state. And Wisconsin, because nobody was paying close attention, was like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. Well, that garnered national attention. That is when ALEC became exposed. That is when the Koch brothers finally emerged from just these, left-wing conspiracy theories, which weren't conspiracy theories. But you know what I mean? That put it on the map politically. But after Wisconsin was successful, same thing happened in Florida a couple months later. Then it went to Texas. Then it went to all these other red states. Laboratories of democracy is what the states are called, and they're called that for a reason. And what's happening in South Dakota right now is what's going to happen in red states all over the country before this year's midterm elections. I want to move on here because we've got quite a few more things to talk about. So here's another one. The turmoil with Kristi Noem and her tenure as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security is not over, because we are learning more and more each day about how corrupt and incompetent her entire department has been. It was revealed this week that a 28-year-old, inexperienced former Homeland Security official by the name of Madison Sheehan wasted millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, on vehicles for ICE agents that are 100% unusable. And for the record, little local dealership run by a Republican donor is the one who got the non-competitive contract from the Department of Homeland Security to supply ICE with dozens of brand new Chevy Tahoes, which, if you've ever looked at them, are not cheap. They are shockingly expensive. for what they are. So Madison Sheehan, a 28-year-old who had no previous experience. And in fact, when she was appointed to her position, they asked her about her lack of experience. And she said, I absolutely think I'm qualified for this job, because at the end of the day, what really makes anybody qualified for any job? Experience, knowledge, intelligence? Like, just right off the top of my head, those things make somebody qualified for a job. Skills, obviously. But this dumbass, who was a high-ranking official at Homeland Security, she, of course, was removed months ago, but she's like, what makes anybody qualified for any job? Makes you think, huh? No, it doesn't. And that's the dumbass who spent tens of millions of dollars to basically repay a Republican donor on vehicles that ICE can't use. And the reason they can't use them is because when she ordered them, she made them put the ICE logo and branding all over the car. ICE has never, in the entire time it has existed, had their logos and decals and names printed all over their cars. They always use unmarked cars, which I think is a bad thing. But now all of these brand new Chevy Tahoes are just sitting in a warehouse collecting dust because of this one effing moron who never should have had this job that she can't even explain why she's not even qualified enough for. But for the record, records also do indicate that Kristi Noem herself and Corey Lewandowski both signed off on the purchase. The level of fraud, mismanagement, waste, incompetence at Homeland Security is breathtaking. Absolutely something that we have never seen to this degree, I believe, in the entire federal government. It's insane how dumb these people are, how wasteful. But this is the kind of story that just screams to me criminal investigation. What was Madison Sheehan's connection to the, Hendrick Motorsports of North Carolina? Rick Hendrick, as I said, the owner of Hendrick's Motorsports, was a huge Republican donor. He got this contract for tens of millions of dollars. It was not competitive. It was not put out for bids. He was just given it because of his status as a Republican donor for a bunch of vehicles that we now can't use. Somebody should be in prison. That's our money. Those are our tax dollars. Those are meals for needy families. We're told we don't have enough money to feed them. Absolute, in my opinion, nothing short of criminal here. Skeets here says, Noem definitely was good at cosplay. Do you have a law degree? Blah, blah, blah. Do you have a law degree? No. Skeets here also says, LMFAO, they are trying to bring MAD to life. Labs to destroy democracy is what they are, says Skeets here about the states. V-Man has a two-parter here. That reminds me of a law in Puerto Rico where the government can do random residency checks, and if you aren't present when they check, they kick you off the voter roll. It's used to target young voters. They do that across the United States too, like all over the U.S., not just in Puerto Rico. Skeets here says they will bring a Supreme Court ruling, and it may or may not. I don't know which way that'll go with this South Dakota law. I think they'll uphold it. I really do, unfortunately. V-Man continues, from my last post, so the government explicitly sends out these random residency checks during the middle of the day when young people are either working or attending university. And for the record, I do know that we have seen that here in the state of Florida where they do these things. They will send out like a letter. And if you don't respond to that letter, they're like, oh, this person no longer exists. Let's take them off the voting rolls. It's happened in Ohio. It's happened in Pennsylvania. It has happened. I don't know if it's happened in Michigan. I know it's happened in North Carolina. So yeah, these are things that all over the U.S. Have happened for many years now. One more. As somebody mentioned in a comment earlier today, Republican Representative Kevin Kiley announced he is no longer a Republican. He is leaving the Republican Party. He actually asked the clerk of the U.S. House of Representatives to remove the little R by his name and replace it with an I for independent. This means that Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson has lost another one. Another one bites the dust. So, on any given piece of legislation, it would stand to reason at this point Mike Johnson can't lose really any Republican votes given the vacancies that currently exist in the House of Representatives, waiting to be filled by the special elections that are, some of them over a month down the road. So Johnson's screwed. Not really. Unfortunately, Kevin Kiley is not leaving the Republican Party because he is sick of the Republican Party. Kevin Kiley was basically gerrymandered out of a district. So he wants to stay in Congress in California, in the U.S. representing California. But he knows that this new district he has to run in is not a red district at all. So he is running as no party affiliation in this new deep blue district. He's trying to dupe the voters, make them think he's not a Republican. In fact, back in December, Kiley lamented on Fox News that he doesn't know where he'll vote after a redistricting plan in the Golden State chopped my district into 6 different pieces. Kiley is now running in California's 6th congressional district, which heavily favors Democrats. On Friday, he said that the filing for re-election has no party affiliation or no party preference, calling gerrymandering a plague on democracy, one that Gavin Newsom has brought back to California. So he's not leaving the Republicans. He's trying to do what's politically expedient for him. As a comment that just came through said, he says he's still going to caucus with the Republicans. So yes, on paper, the Republicans have lost a member, but they've lost a member in the same sense that the Democrats don't have 47 in the Senate. They have 46 because Bernie Sanders is an independent. It's that kind of situation. So for anybody that was kind of getting your hopes up, maybe, I'm not going to say you shouldn't have hope. I'm not going to say it's foolish to dream big. But in this particular instance, Kevin Kiley, definitely still a Republican, even if it doesn't say so next to his name. Couple quick super chats, and we are calling it a day after this. Scorpius ZA says he said he was still caucus with the GOP on admin and other votes. So thank you for bringing that up. And Skeets here says guess who is last named Johnson plus losing sleep at night. Is Kevin Kiley a rhino? It says Grumpy Cat. I don't think so. He may be, again, with this new change, who knows, but I don't think he will be. But look, if you're not subscribed, do subscribe. Tons of great content still coming up throughout the rest of the day. And until then, I will see you all tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care of yourself. See you tomorrow.